Hi, I'm Emma Muir, soul coach, energy healer, and well-being guide, and an unapologetic curious soul. Connected Conversations brings well-being, love, and connection through authentic and open conversations, sharing amazing people who are being of service through their businesses, talking about all aspects of well-being and healing in life and in business. As a soul coach, I help men and women unlearn and unfuck themselves from childhood experiences, patterns, programming, and trauma. I know deeply learning through my own path to well-being over the years, all the different parts and habits that are needed to live a heart-centered life filled with well-being. Through my curious nature, I delve into connected conversations showing their journey in business and in life to inspire you to take the path to your well-being. The truth is, we're better supporting one another. We're better sharing our gifts to help one another in deepening our connection to ourselves and others. Thank you for watching or listening. I'm grateful for all your support, for sharing, for liking and commenting. All of you is welcome here. Here is our wonderful guest today to introduce their gifts and passion to
I'm
you.
ready. Hi, my name is Bliss, and I'm a pleasure and intimacy coach. I am really passionate about guiding individuals to get out of their head and into their body so they can reach deeper levels of intimacy, trust, and pleasure in their lives. Because I believe that pleasure is everyone's birthright, and life is too short to have mediocre orgasms.
Welcome everyone to Connected Conversations, to bring healing, love and connection to our everyday lives through open and authentic conversations. I am sharing time with Bliss today, who is a pleasure mentor, sexologist, embodiment coach and a former escort. I don't have too many questions about that, but I am interested. She draws on all of those skills and experience to help individuals and couples to discover deep intimacy, deep trust, and deep pleasure through her pleasure masterclass and her one-on-one coaching. Welcome, Bea. I am incredibly excited and so honored to have this conversation with you and to deep dive into this connected conversation. Thank you so much for being with us today. How are you?
Thank you. What a nice intro. I just can't stop smiling and my body feels all like, oh, yeah, I'm super excited to be here, as this is a topic that is definitely a dinner table topic conversation in my world, but it's not for a lot of people. And so I really love every opportunity I have to be on camera or even a recording, so other people can have the opportunity to. It's kind of like that fly on the wall that's like, ooh, what are they talking about? So yeah, I'm really excited. I feel like this little kid, like, oh, like
Me too, because I'm the person if I get together with friends, I'm the person that goes into this. I'm the person that talks about masturbating. I'm the person that talks about my own and what I do. And it's interesting to see how people respond and react to that, and even my own responses in that. I don't know that I haven't had the opportunity to sit around as a couple and speak about that, because in my relationship I'm extremely private with that kind of stuff, with sex and speaking about my own, my own intimate, what's happening there, not with partner, very open about that, but with my girlfriends and friends, but it's always interesting to me, the discomfort that people, like, you can just see people swimming. And I've been there. I've definitely been there, in my own body, not even sexuality. Like, that's such a completely separate thing for me when we talk about being intimate and trusting your body and, allowing yourself to receive and experience deep pleasure. Because once you can, you're not going back.
Nope.
No. So I do want to start with, so I'm really excited because I love this. I think this is such an important conversation don't get me wrong, I don't believe chasing pleasure is the right thing in life, but we do need to receive and experience it, because I say to people all the time, we're born to feel good. You know, that's why we have our nerve endings at the, you know, on our skin, you know, right on the edge,
Absolutely.
because we're actually meant to feel good.
You're onto it.
So I want to know how you got here. What's your background? Like, tell me that part of
Whew.
that story.
How much time we got?
Well, you know, we're booked for 90 minutes, so let's go. I do that
Well,
too.
I can give you a short version.
Yeah.
So I'm originally from Brazil.
Mhm.
And as you may or may not know, Brazilian culture is very sexual, very open, very. So I was never told not to be sexual. I was just told not to be a slut, which is ironic because years later I became an escort, right? And so,
Can I just, so I need to like just break that down. What is the difference in, because I'm from, you know, a very, you know, very English based culture
mhm.
in Australia. And I agree with you, because I've definitely been called a slouch many times, not at all. But I want to know what's the difference.
Okay, so the difference in Brazilian culture is that you need to be a lady in society. So kind of like they say, you need to be a lady on the street and a slut in bed kind of thing, but you shouldn't
Oh,
be someone that goes around from person to person or to, that was in the 90s, like when people are a little bit more conservative when I was a teenager. Nowadays it's a bit different, and hookups are very uh, common or their norm. But back then it was like, oh, you know, you only have sex with a boyfriend, or some of my friends only had sex when they were just, you know, after getting married. And I was like, what? And so I've always been very curious about pleasure and sex, and I have an older brother and he had these magazines lying around and some of the
ah,
pages were glued together, and I'm like, why are these pages glued together? But I didn't know at the time. I was about 12 or 13.
right.
And so that's how it started. And then I will bring up the subject. I'm like, oh, why is this? And then people are like, oh, we don't talk about these things. And back in those days, internet wasn't really a thing. It was just starting to become mainstream, to the
Yep.
point where you had one computer for the whole household and a shared email account and all that stuff, right? So I'm kind of like revealing my age in this episode
Oh
as
no,
well.
I'm with you, Bea. I'm with you because I grew up, you know, like my teenage years were in the 90s as well. Absolutely. I'm a 76 baby, so I'm happy to reveal my age because I'm incredibly
Yeah.
proud.
I don't feel old, but when I start talking about these things, I'm like, oh wow, that was, you know, like,
Yeah, yeah, I don't
anyways.
feel that way, but I go, oh my God, I'm totally in my 40s. And yesterday I had to go, oh, that's right, I'm 46. Yeah, that's right, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, so long story short, I would ask questions and I would go to the library, and there was Encyclopedia Britannica and you know, some magazines here and there. And then I moved to the US when I was a teenager. And there was more access to the internet, and then I was like doing research, and I, you know, it was like teenager hormones going around. I was like, ooh, cute boy, cute boy. So I kind of started dating around, but not like playing the good girl, but not telling anyone. So I was like, oh, no, I'm a nice girl. I'm a proper girl. But I wasn't. Behind the bush, I was the biggest slut, but nobody knew about that because of the shame around acting on my desires. Because I was told, don't be a slut. And I wanted to be a slut, but I couldn't, right? Because of the feeling of, oh, my family will reject me or society will reject me because you're looked down upon back in those days, right? And that was my experience. And then it got to a point where I was having really unfulfilling sex with guys I was dating, and someone asked me, why don't you charge for it? And I'm like, oh no, that's like called a prostitute. I'm not a prostitute. I'm a nice girl. I'm a good girl. And then I'm like, hang on a second, I'm having sex for a dinner or a ticket to a concert, and it's shitty sex. And so I thought about it. I was like, you know what? Maybe I should charge for it. And that's how I ended up becoming an escort, at least in New Zealand, where I live now. And sex work is decriminalized. So New Zealand has the most liberal sex work laws in the world.
Okay.
So it's like a job. You're a contractor, you pay taxes, you have rights. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I have shitty sex for free or for a dinner. Might as well get paid for it. And so, and so I did, and I learned a lot. And I decided to go to school to get a psychology degree. I'm like, right, I want to be a sex therapist because, wow, hearing people's stories all the time behind closed doors was like, you know, this guy will come in and he's like, oh, like the big shit, and then ooh, I said shit. Is that okay?
Oh God, I'll swear my face off, so don't even
Okay.
worry about it.
And then behind closed doors, they couldn't perform, or they were insecure, or they, you know, all these things. Or sometimes they didn't even want to get naked. They just wanted to talk. They just wanted a safe space to talk. Yeah. And it was funny because I was a counselor for Lifeline, which is a free counseling service here in New Zealand. And I was practicing my counseling skills with my sex work clients. Like, they were paying me to be naked, and they didn't even want to have sex. They sometimes just wanted to cuddle and talk. And I was practicing, and I was like, oh, okay, like I could totally do this. I could be like a naked sex therapist of sorts. But you know, obviously you can't do that if you abide by the code of therapists. There are all these rules and restrictions and things. And then I was introduced to a conscious sexuality, to embodiment. And I had no idea how disconnected I was from my own body. You know, like you mentioned earlier when we were chatting offline, is that how people are disconnected from their bodies. And I didn't know I was, because I was never taught how to connect with my body, right? And when I used to work,
it's part of encouraged as well, because I know that was,
yes,
the more I encourage myself to connect and to feel into my body, the more I connected to it.
Yes,
so we're not actually encouraged to.
So the thing is, when you work as an escort, or you get paid for sex, that means that, I mean, you can still choose who you engage with, but I'm there for the money. It's a job. So I had interactions with people from 18 to 80, tall, short, bald, hairy, slim, fat, you name it, I've had it. Including some people with disabilities. So I've had like the whole spectrum. And not everyone is, you know, there's no chemistry, it's not a match. And so it's kind of like, oh, it becomes a job. It's just like, oof, okay. And so not being very connected to my body was an advantage at the time, being, you know, doing that work, because I didn't feel much, even though sometimes I was like, ooh, I think of the money, and then I'll think of the money, and I'd be like, think of the money, think of the money, think of the money. And I was making $150 to $200 an hour at the time. And that's 10 years ago, which for someone who was making minimum wage prior to that was a big, you know, working like 1 hour was almost 2 days worth of work.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I could totally do this, but not understanding the consequences long-term that would have had in my own sex life as well as in my body.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you're right, though, because, I mean, look, I never got paid for what I did, for the choices that I made. But I know, I'm in Australia, though, it's very different. But, you know, I can absolutely relate to that. And I'm sure so many men and women can relate to, you know, not being actually connected sexually. And it's so different. Like, once you actually dial in, it's such a different experience, isn't it? Because like the minute someone's not connected with me, I know, and I can feel it energetically, and I can no longer continue with them, because I'm like, listen, if you can't even, or if you have a willingness to be open to do this, I'm not here to teach you, man.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. So as Faith has it, I was introduced to embodiment practices and and I was like, I don't want to be a sex therapist because I can't touch my clients, or I can't do deeper work. And then when I was introduced to sexological body work, I was like, yeah, this is what I've been searching for all my life. And I was introduced to breath work and embodiment practices and orgasmic yoga and mindfulness and all that good stuff. And my body just went, girlfriend, we're not going to do this anymore. And I'm like, but body, think of the money. And body's like, no deal.
But he's like, get fucked. It's more like the soul. The soul's like, we're connected. We're actually dialed in now.
Yeah.
So this shit doesn't land with us.
Absolutely.
And the brain's like, but what do you mean? I've been okay with this. The body's like, mm-mm.
That's exactly what happened, because I never thought I would leave the industry. I had so much fun, meeting all these people and just having all these experiences that no textbook, no university can ever give you any of this unless you're there in the underground, in the the think of brothel, red lights, dim, like shady figures, like it's just a whole, it's like out of a movie, really, out of like a underbelly series kind of thing. It's really, yeah, it's a whole different world. And then eventually, as soon as I became embodied, body was like, mm-mm. And I remember my last client, he was trying to touch my chest, and I just kept like going back. My body was like, don't let this guy touch me. And then he touched me. And in my mind, I was like, get your paws off me, you, ugh. And I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And I couldn't. And then that was it. That was the last time I've ever had a sex for a client. And that was 2016. So that was about 6 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is amazing. And like whether, I mean, you're in an industry or whether just in relationships, it speaks volumes to what can happen. And the more that you dial in and more connect and I talk about it coming home. The more you come home to your soul and dial in, there's external stuff. You can really reject a lot of things. You begin to, well, not even you just begin to reject it. And now I don't even need to verbally reject things anymore. Energetically, things dissipate from my life. Like they just fall away. And I often look and think, where did that go? Where did that person, how did that? And I think, because I know energetically, I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
The more aware, the more you dialed it in. So I wanted to start with intimacy, because to me, I like website, the work you do is amazing. And I want to get into a little bit of that as well, and sort of be able to understand and break down what you do. However, I wanted to start with intimacy and ask about, what does that mean in the work that you do?
Great question. So what does intimacy mean in the work I do is it always starts with self. So most people think, oh, I need a partner, or I need to teach my partner how to do this, and my partner should know how to please me. And for most people, it's so funny, because funny but not funny in that sense, that to most people, intimacy equals sex. So people don't know how to, and then because they have sex, then they get the cuddle, then they get the emotional bonding after the fact. And so many people I've encountered, they have sex so they can get the after, the cuddling, the oxytocin, instead of having the conversations, being vulnerable, creating the space to share, to open up, to even just eye gaze or hold hands and share breaths together. I've had so many deep moments of intimacy, even with strangers, when I used to attend workshops, and just in that, even could be a man or a woman, doesn't matter, or a non-binary. Nowadays, it's you got to be more careful with that, right? So I'm going to be all inclusive with
look, I mean,
gender and all that.
I know, I understand what you're saying, but biologically, and that's what I will always say, and I always say in this show, biologically and genetically, there is male and there is female. So I'm okay with being that. And if someone's offended, it's not here to offend you. We're just sticking to the biological facts.
Correct. Well, it doesn't matter what you have between your legs. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that really that moment of like standing in front of another person, sometimes no touch, just eye gazing, deep breath, or alternating breaths, or holding hands and feeling the warmth of the other person's hands, or sometimes the coolness, right? Or sometimes they're sweating because they're so nervous. And when you get to do that with someone that you love, is next level, like oxytocin overload, and it's so intimate. And sometimes you're not even in the bedroom. You can have that anywhere. So it doesn't have to be sexual. And what I find in my line of work is that for most people, intimacy equals sex, or it has to be bedroom related.
Why do you think that
activities.
is? Because I've got my own thoughts on it. Why do you think that is? That it's always related to sex?
Well, look around what's modeled to us. One, there's no school for it. Two, magazines, internet, Hollywood, Netflix. Pretty much when people are connected, when there's the heat of the passion is bedroom related, and then they do the deed and then they cuddle and the man usually falls asleep. The cliche, but it's true though. And he does it, and then they just do life together, but there are very little intimate moments.
No,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
Look, I agree with you, and look, that's something that my children and I talk about. They're, you know, moving into teenage years, and I absolutely encourage and talk to them about exploring their own bodies, being intimate and comfortable with their own bodies before they would even consider bringing anyone else into that, so that they have a really good feel for themselves and what feels good. And
oh, they're so good. Your children are so lucky to have you as a mom, because I got zero talk about pleasure. I was told, don't be a slut. That's it. That's the only instructions I was given. That don't be a slut. Not even don't show up home pregnant, not even nothing. Just don't be a slut. That's all I got.
Well, you got more than I did. I didn't even get that. I got someone's older sister talking to me about sex, which was super weird. And yeah, but look, I do want to go back. I love what you said, because intimacy is genderless, isn't it? Like, it doesn't matter whatever you want to put out there. And I've got to say, to me, I think there's so much pressure on that at the moment, which there's way too much conversation around choosing it, being it, whatever, because it's all externalized the way the conversation is about. It's got nothing to do with actually who you are. So I do want to say that when I talk about male, female, I'm always talking about just genetics, biological. Yeah. It's very medical for me. Yeah. But when I talk about gender, it's you know, that's more about self-expression. And to me, that's actually almost like you need to take the gender out of it, because self-expression doesn't have anything to do with actually like your biological base. But I love that. I love that you're saying, and this is what I'm taking it, so please correct me if I'm wrong, that intimacy really has nothing to do with gender.
That's right. Or sex.
Well, because, you know, some of my most intimate moments that I've shared with my children, and I share very intimate and deep conversations with them, with my friends. I shared one recently where we were just having a really tough conversation, and I just said something to her that we had this moment of eye contact where it was just holding space, and it was tough, and I could feel her energetic shift of, that's hard to hear. But she rang me afterwards, probably about a week after, and said, thanks. All I could feel from you was love. And it was so intimate. So yeah, it was beautiful. And even now I can feel that in my body when I say it. But that's intimacy, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it's felt well beyond, like, you know, if I'm talking about the most intimate moments of my life, nothing to do with sex.
Totally.
And I can feel them when I talk about them now. Like when I said about having them with my kids, my whole body has this, it's a hum, it's not even a vibration, and it's an emotion. You can feel it.
Absolutely, you're onto it. As you're talking, I'm feeling this warmth in my heart. But you know, fuzzy feelings. Yeah.
So grateful we have people like you in the world, Bia, that are out there teaching this and sharing it, because you know, I'm an explorative person, so of course I'm a curious little fucker, so I'm going to go out and ask a lot of questions. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to go out and do that.
Oh, I love it.
But how many people, you know, I hope people that are listening and watching this are really starting to just spark a little, you know, some little things in your brain, and starting to see, hey, I'm actually disconnected from the intimacy within my body. So I love that you started with self, because that was actually one of my questions. You know, when we talk about intimacy, it's quite often, you're right, with other.
Yeah.
So where do we start? If we're talking about intimacy with self, non-sexual, because it needs, where do you start?
Well, you start with closing your eyes and taking a deep breath and really noticing the just the air going from your nostrils to your lungs, and then the exhale, and really feeling that, and getting out of your head and into your body. Like that's everyone has access to the breath. It's a fact. If you're listening to this or watching it, you have access to your breath, and is taking that time to pause and really feel. And then after that, you can add some touch. For example, I always start with my clients and my workshop participants with their hands together so they can close their eyes and breathe and feel the warmth or coolness of their hands. And if the palms are touching firmly or soft, or if their fingers are super stiff, or if they're relaxed. And it starts with the awareness of just the hands touching. And then after the touch comes the movement. Again, like we usually give touch to another, or we receive. There's always a giving and receiving. In order for me to receive, I must give. People always think that is it has to be reciprocal. And the reality is it doesn't have to be, because when you learn to give touch to yourself, and then we start with the hand and very slowly touching just the palm of the hand and tracing the lines and feeling the touch on the fingertips, the giving hand as well as the receiving hand. And people go, wow, I wasn't even sure if I was giving or if I was receiving. I'm like, exactly, because you have nerve endings, right? So you're always receiving when you're giving, but you need to dial that in. You need to tune in. And the way to do that is always to start with the breath, and then bring your hands together and start exploring. And of course, then we go the whole body, but
Yeah, no,
one
I
step
love
at a
it.
time. Like that's the beginner's practice, is always notice the breath and then just the touch. Or sometimes people want to lie down, one hand on the chest, and you can see my belly, but one hand on the belly, and just feel the weight of the hand. And if you're not wearing any clothes, just the warmth or the coolness of the hands and the weight of the hand on the body, and then start from there, and then the touch. And some people, if they're in a male body, usually they have hair, and then noticing the contrast of the hair on the skin on the giving hand. So it's really interesting, the landscape that we have, that we don't pay attention to because we're just too busy. In order to receive, I got to give, and I have to experience this, and people are too heady, always focus on the destination, rushing. It's like going on a road trip and wanting to arrive at the destination and missing out on the waterfalls and the little hidden gems on the way, and the turn here for another tourist attraction. It's just like, just want to get there.
It speaks so it speaks such volumes to me, and that's definitely in the work that I do, really moving people into their heart and soul. And I love what you're saying about giving and receiving, because when we're from an ego and a head space, it's absolutely looking for equal. It's looking for this proper exchange. They're trying to right, that looks and feels, and it's not even feel, because we create emotions in our head too. But I love what you're saying. It's an energetic exchange, and the more we're dialed into our bodies, we're looking for equity, like getting what you need. And it doesn't have to be equal. It just, okay, that feels right for me to receive. And then and when you're giving, that feels right for me to give, and it doesn't have to be equal.
It doesn't, and you're absolutely right. And and I noticed there's this piece, especially with the women. The women don't know how to receive. The women think their role is to give, and a lot of women have issues of self-worth and not good enough, and so when they're receiving, they can't relax because they're already thinking about the giving. So and I've noticed with the men sometimes is the same, that because the man has to be the provider or they have to be the giver, then they just give, they overgive. And when it's their turn to receive, they brush it off. They also don't know how to receive. And so it's like there are just two types of people, male, female, they're giving, and they suck at receiving. Really, they suck at it. I don't know how else to put it. And it's so sad because is like a transaction. And I'm giving, I have to receive. Now it's my turn to receive, give, receive, and not like, you know what, babe, today is my day to just receive, and it's all about me. And the next time is all about you. And once I discover that,
Yeah, but I agree. I love what you said, transactional. And that's a lot of, I really feel like, you know, that's really, it's just coming to me now. That's really what we're talking about in terms of, you know, our inability to be intimate and to receive is because we're looking for the transaction.
Yeah.
We're so externalized with it. And even taking away again the genders, but if we're looking at energy, like if we're looking at masculine, feminine, like someone does need to be a container. Someone does, you know, need to be able to hold the space, and someone needs to be able to receive it all and expand into it and, you know, go nuts. But it doesn't have to be female. And just because masculine energy is a container and is that like, how wide do I need to be here for the feminine energy, has nothing to do with gender.
Totally.
Nothing. And I really, because it's something that I've learned in myself over the past couple of years, the more I've sat in and become aware of my feminine energy, the more I've had an openness to receive. And, you know, the more softer I can become, and, you know, the wider and the bigger.
Totally.
Kind of
and I would love to share a little story, which is tied into what we're talking about, because I was one of those people too, because I mean, there's no school for this stuff, right? So I was going like everybody else, like it's like the blind leading the blind, right? We're looking externally for guidance when none is available really. And when I did my training and I started doing the practices and really coming home to myself and to my body and my pleasure, and doing the hand practice and then the full body practice, and understanding that I didn't need another to give me pleasure, that I was self-sufficient, that I could self-source. And so that changed, because then I wasn't connecting with another from a place of need. I was connecting with another from a place of desire. Because before I felt like I needed someone to give me pleasure, because I didn't know what I needed or wanted, because, well, no one ever asked me that question. And when they did, they would say, oh, how do you like it? I'm like, oh, whatever you want. I'm okay with anything, because I didn't know myself then. And it was interesting because once I started learning the practices and coming home to myself, my body was like, I'm only going to spend time with you in my terms. And I wasn't afraid to speak up anymore. And I wasn't afraid to ask for what I needed. And I used to go on Tinder dates years ago. And they'll be like, oh, you're a sexologist? I'm like, yep. And I can do it really good by myself. I don't really need you. If you want a piece of this, like, you're gonna have to work really hard. And they're like, no, but I'm not like the other guys, don't say. And they will work really hard for it. And then eventually, when I would connect with selected people, it was always because I was no longer attracting low quality people or people who couldn't meet me where I was. So it's kind of like tuning into a radio station, say the rock station. When you're listening to the rock, you only attract people who like the rock. But when you're listening to the gospel, you only attract people that like the gospel. And when you tune into the hits or the pop music, you get that, right? So it's kind of like tuning in to a very different radio station. So in or like the frequency, the vibration had shifted. So I was no longer in the I'm a needy person, come please me when I can't do this myself because I have no clue what I'm doing, to I know exactly what I want. I know what I'm doing. Oh, I can give it to myself really good. And I'd like to share that, because now my cup is full. And now I can give from a full cup. Versus in the past, I had an empty cup with a little hole in it, expecting someone else with another empty cup to fill up my cup. How did that work out for me? Not very well.
Oh, look, I think there'd be plenty of people listening going, yeah. And knowing, and I love what you said about self-sourcing, like, you know, and I agree with you, when you can fill your own cup. And I use the term coming home. When you come home to yourself and you really understand what your needs are, and how you can fill them on your own, then you start to attract people that can fill your cup and they don't have to try. It's not an effort for
Totally.
them. It's
Totally.
just, and vice versa, you know, you're able to fill up their cup effortlessly without taking
Yes.
from your cup, without having to pour some out, and you know, you're not having to do any of that. And I love
Totally.
that. And I think, no, not I think, I know deeply that that is so missing
Yeah.
for most people's lives, is this ability to self-source from within.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, you're
Mm.
that's ding 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 ding. We got a winner.
It's so rich. I just love them. I keep getting goosebumps in this conversation because, you know, you're talking about it from an intimacy perspective, and, you know, and I do this work in the soul sense. So I just, you know, I really love that synergy around it. You know, it's very similar work, but coming at it from very different angles and just allowing people to
Totally.
come the fuck home to themselves.
Yeah.
Shut off the bullshit. So you're really right, because when we talk about intimacy, if we can take out, and I'm not saying that porn or magazines or anything bad, but when you're coming from a place of an empty cup and expecting that to fill you up, it's going to be vapid. It's not going to fill you up at all.
It's going to drain you even more because, like I said before, empty and empty doesn't make a full.
Well, yeah.
You can't.
Well, your shame story kicks in, doesn't it? And it says, oh, well, I haven't got this and I should feel bad for that because, you know, like it's just, and you know, without even awareness to know that's what's going on in your head. But it's so fascinating. And then, so if we're, okay, so intimacy, we've got our intimacy to ourselves.
Yes.
We've built that up. And for many people out there, that if you're at the beginning, 100% have a chat with Bea, honestly. And then what about other? What happens to other when you're full from your own cup?
Yeah.
Someone's full in their cup.
Yeah.
And intimately knows what they want and need.
Yeah.
What happens then?
Fireworks, volcanic explosions.
Beyond sex.
Shooting stars. That's what happens.
Orgasms that people talk about in wives' tales.
They're
real.
Seriously, when I heard these stories before about these crazy orgasms, I'm like, they're just making it up, and so I can feel bad. That's not possible. Woo, let me tell you, they're more than possible. And this is what I discovered in my journey. I was like, I reached a point where I was like, maybe this is it. Maybe I can't experience any more pleasure. Is this the ceiling of pleasure? Okay, I mean, it's not bad. Don't get me wrong. This is nice, but is this it? Have I arrived at the promised land? And then after a while, and I'm like, oh, hello. Oh, this is more. Yeah. And then boom, and there's more. And I've been on this journey for 6 years, full time, and as in full time in my not I don't mean just work, but really in my own discovery and practice. And keeps blowing my mind. And I'm like, wow, there's no limit. So it's like there's no sky is the limit. There's absolutely no limit. And I keep discovering, like shattering new glass ceilings. And it's really incredible. So to answer your question, when you come together with another who can meet you where you are, yeah, full cup, not full and empty, because it's there's an imbalance, right? Is words can really describe, because most people have never experienced anything like that. And if the mind doesn't have a point of reference, it's just a concept and they can't really relate to it. But it's one of those things that you read in fairy tales where like where you live happily ever after with your intimacy, and your cup is always full, because you know, no matter what, you got you. And even if this relationship breaks down, it doesn't matter, because they're not your source of happiness and fulfillment. You just combining your energies and your bodies together creates the magic. And I know for myself, when I was saying earlier, when I started doing this, I've only attracted people who could meet me there.
Mm.
And now I totally repel, not now, but I'm in a committed relationship now, but even like the other people just repel it because it was like water and oil. It just, you can't, there's no way you can continue connecting with these people because they're just, they can't meet you. And so if the relationship breaks down, doesn't matter, you're going to find someone even better. And that's been my experience. I'm like, oh, this person, I'm so in love with them because they're amazing. And then when something happened, or they were from overseas and they left, or then I met someone more next level, and then more next level, and more next level. And I'm like, okay, but I'm ready for a committed relationship. I'm ready, universe. I've done the work. I'm ready. I have never dated someone like my partner.
Mm-hmm.
We have the most incredible relationship in every level, in and out of the bedroom. We meet each other in all levels. Not to say it's not perfect. There
But you
are
don't
some
want
challenges.
perfect. Oh my God,
And
without
and
challenges,
there's no,
boring.
I mean, it's just life. There's no life without challenges. But the point I'm trying to make for the purposes of this share is that people tend to cling to the first person that is not the shittiest person. But the reality is, the more you work on yourself and the more, so you're always going to be better than who you were yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
You're only competing against yourself. And sometimes you will outgrow a relationship and a person. And you don't be afraid. Like, there will be someone better, because you are really, like, you don't need other people. You got you. And once you know you got you, it doesn't matter who comes your way, because you know this can hold anything and anyone.
Look, from my own personal experience of being single for the past 4 years, same. Like I kept, I've the longest person I've dated was 6 months, and at one stage I was like, oh my God, like I feel like I did berate myself a little bit, like I'm burning through people. And it was probably only about 18 months ago that I went, hang on, I'm actually, like, these people are getting out of my life pretty quickly. And I'm pretty proud of that, actually. So they might only be in my life for a couple of weeks, but I'm clocking them, and energetically I push them away. And, like, there'll be an experience that'll come up that I go, oh, okay, that's what I need to see about them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good, not for me. And you're right. The next person that I've dated, I've gone, oh, that's a little bit better, but not quite right yet.
Yeah. And the piece is that in the end, you realize that I'm okay on my own. And I swear, I thought I would never meet someone that can match what I want. I don't want kids, don't have kids. I'm almost 40. Chances of meeting someone who matches that alone are very slim. And I had this list of all the other things I wanted. And I met my partner. No kids wasn't even in the list. Okay. And he doesn't want kids, doesn't have kids, and has had a vasectomy on top of that. And I was like, oh,
Don't get me started on that subject. I'm almost like, let's get every male.
No, but the point is that I'm trying to make is that I had already given up hope. And I thought, well, if life means I get to hang out with me and my pleasure and my friends, and I get to travel, and I get to have occasional, sharing deep intimacy for a short period of time, I'm okay with that. So I was totally cool about being single forever and just having lovers around. And then all of a sudden my partner appeared in my life. And I didn't even believe it was possible. And it is.
I love
But you see
it.
what happened? I stopped looking for it, and it just appeared.
I mean, it's I feel like you're really speaking into that you found it within yourself. And that absolutely helps me move into the next question, because I did want to understand the true aspects of relationships, of a relationship. And I did want to start with self, because, for me, that's where everything begins, the relationship that you have with yourself. So how does that come into your work?
The relationship itself.
Yeah, the two aspects of relationships. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so like I was saying before, is first you need to know yourself and really come home to your body and understand where you're at. And the reality is we all have a lot of emotional baggage we never looked at, because hello, vulnerability is seen as a weakness in society. You can't talk about these things. Nope, not appropriate. Can't ask for help. And so you really gotta, it's like clearing that closet, that the one that you only open the door to chuck things in, and never, like eventually that closet door doesn't close anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So really you need to come home to yourself. So it's not just the feeling your body, but also you have to deal with your emotional baggage too. So it's not just, oh, learn to feel your body, but if you don't think you're worthy of receiving, I've had people in my course drop out because they could not handle the amount of pleasure they were experiencing. Their mind was self-sabotaging, and they're like, it's wrong to experience this much pleasure. And then they just never came back. We kept touching email, but they couldn't come back to the group, is the shame of not being able to receive, right? So they it's completely self-sabotage their growth, because they weren't able to. So it doesn't matter if you do the work, but if you don't deal with your emotional stuff, you can't receive either. So of course there are many layers to that, but I hope that answers the question.
No, absolutely. And I 100% agree with you. So when you're working with couples, how do you allow them to come home to, or create, no, let me frame the question, because it's all merged into one now, but I love it. So when you're talking about working with a couple, okay, we've got them to come home to themselves, but what are the aspects of relationships that you're going to work into with them? So if we're doing the body work, what else? How do you deal with them?
So with couples, again, it always starts with self, because the couple usually says, oh, if my partner only did this, or if they only did that, if, right? So you got to start working with them separately, because at the end of the day, it's always the self. Yeah. And because they've been together for a while, there's no sense of self. It's us. Or if they have kids, it's us, the family. I'm a parent. So there's no longer I'm the lover, I'm the person. There is I'm the wife, the husband, or the mother, the father. And that's pretty much it, right? Yeah. So you have to separate that and like, okay, who are you? Like, what do you want? What do you really want? What do you want? What do you really want? And then working with them separately first, and then giving them practices to connect with each other and create the space. So then there'll be exercises that they can do to come together, which, as I was saying in the beginning of this call, was to let's eye gaze and hold hands and just share that intimacy, or let's create a safe space to have vulnerable conversations and to make requests. It's funny because when I was in relationship with my ex-partner, we bought a super king size bed, and it was such a big
king
bed.
Size bed. What is a super king size bed?
Exactly what it sounds like, is a massive bed.
And because I've got a king size, and I'm like,
yeah,
do you need bigger?
Yeah, and the joke was, we're like, oh, this bed is so big, we could totally fit one or two more people here. And the other one would say, yeah, we could totally fit more people here. But we never created the space to have a conversation about having a threesome or having to bring other people into play, right? And because I didn't have the language skills at the time or the tools, and my partner didn't either. So we were kind of like just hinting, but never making the request. And then we broke up, we went our separate ways, but we're friends. And because the sex was off the table, one day I was like, oh, remember, because now I do this work, right? So I said, remember when we used to talk about the bed? It's like, I've always wanted to have a threesome with you. And then he says, why didn't you say anything? And I'm like, hang on a second, what? And he says, why didn't you say anything? I'm like, what do you mean? He says, I'll totally be down to have a threesome. I'm like, oh, you would? And so I kind of felt like I totally missed out. And so did he, because we didn't have the communication skills to create a space, because I thought he was going to judge me. He thought I was going to judge him if we had the conversation, because, like monogamy is mainstream, but doesn't mean it works, because a lot of guys I had as clients were married, but that's something just to put that note in there. But just overall in society, we just don't know, because people don't have these conversations openly. So going back to your question, how do you work with couples, is giving them tools to communicate, to ask for what they want, to be vulnerable, to share, to give them tools like nonviolent communication, to take responsibility of their shit, their desires, their fears, their wants, their, sometimes usually the man wants sex and the woman doesn't, and then she just does it because, oh, that's my duty as a wife or as a partner, or he pays for the bills or the children or whatever. But if you ask them, what do you really want? Oh, hell no, I don't want to have sex with you. Like, I'm really tired. Not that I don't love you, but right? Or
the
so
type
it's really
of sex that you want to have.
Absolutely, yeah. And
I mean,
because people are not having these conversations.
Look, I 100%, and that's something that I've had to learn myself, just, even in the work that I do, just having really challenging conversations. So it's almost like a tell sign to me when I get into dating someone. If I can't have a mature conversation about sex prior to it happening, it's not the right man.
I said to my friend, when I stood my last round of Tinder, was years ago, and I went first date, I'm like, are you on medication? Do you have any mental health issues? And they're like, whoa, why do you want to know that? I'm like, because if I'm going to be invested in this, I must know what because my ex was on and off medication, and it was very challenging. So I didn't want to date someone who was on medication, or that wasn't responsible with their, right? And they were like, oh, but that's a bit too early. I'm like, no, mate, I'm almost 40. I got no time to waste, like I'm running out of time. I'd said to them, I think I was about 36. I wasn't, I'm almost 40 now, but I think I was 36 back then. And still, I'm like, no, I'm going to have the difficult conversations on the first date, because life is busy. I don't have time to be pretending to be something I'm not, or because everyone wears a mask when they date. And everyone pretends to be something they're not, because everybody thinks that they're the only ones flawed and everybody else is perfect.
No.
Chuck that thought in the bin, because really, so have the difficult conversations on the first date, especially if you are, in your late 30s, 40s, even 50s or older, because why waste time with someone who is not a hell yes?
Oh, look, I agree with you. And, that's been a beautiful experience for me to move into dating that way. And it did take me a couple of years. But I literally go into dates. The first couple of dates, I'm like, so what is it that you want here? Because this is what I want. And this is what I imagine my life looking like when I'm in a committed relationship. And so once I do that, it's always interesting to me, because then I can watch the action from there, because I'm, I come into it going, okay, this is what I want. I'm not perfect, but this is my life and what it looks like. And I just allow people to show up from there. That's me. I just allow you the space then to show up. And if you're agreeing with me and you're saying, yeah, I want all that, but I can see the action is different, I'm going to call you on that, because I'm going to call myself. If my words and my action aren't in integrity and aren't matching, it's going to show up for me, and I'm going to feel deeply uncomfortable.
Totally.
I can tell from someone else as well. So look, I get it. Dating you would be like dating me. Do you know, like I'm a soul coach. So when people think, men get all excited about dating me, but then realize I don't want to counsel you. Like, I'm not going to coach you. And so it's really interesting to see what people are like. And I can tell you within a couple of weeks of me dating, like in the last maybe 2 or 3 people I've dated, not a lot over the past couple of years, but it's shown up really quickly. Shown up very quickly that actually we don't want the same things.
Yeah.
You're not actually, or you're not capable of that either.
And that's okay.
Oh my God.
Like, it's good to know on the first 2 dates, right? Because then it's like, okay, next.
Yeah, no judgment from me, just we're not in the same place. And that's all I want, But I really feel like you're speaking a lot about trust, because when you've got self-trust, you're able to have those conversations, because you know that you're going to be okay afterwards. Whatever answer you get.
Absolutely.
You hold
And the piece is that I'm so glad you mentioned that people always are afraid of being rejected. It's like, oh, they rejected me. But the reality is, when someone says no to you, they're saying yes to themselves. The same way when you say no to someone, you're saying yes to yourself. And when I learned that and I started using that in my own life and teaching this to my clients, they're like, wow, everything makes so much sense, because then I don't take it personally anymore. Like, oh, there's something wrong with me. It's like, no, because for example, if your boss, I don't have a boss, and I know you don't have a boss, but back in the day, once upon a time when we had jobs, and if you're listening and you have a job and your boss says to you, and it's like Friday, you have a hot date with, your partner, or a new date or whatever, you have plans with your girlfriends, and then they say, oh man, like, I'm so sorry, Emma, can you please come in, because this person didn't show up, and I'd be like, this is super important, and then Emma's like, I got this hot date, I got plans, but okay, I'll stay because yeah. And then you do it, and inside you're just like, "Rawr!" But you do it because you don't know how to say no, and that feels really yuck.
Well,
And
it
usually
doesn't.
we do that.
It's not your
And
truth. It's not the truth of who you
no,
are. It's not the truth of what you want. Yeah.
no. The same way when you don't want to have sex, or you don't want to go out with your friends, even though you agree you're gonna go with them, or go meet the family, or do the extended family thing, or whatever it is. If people don't know how to say no, and they also don't know how to receive the no.
Do you think that's part of it? Because not being able to say no is that because they can't receive a no, then they aren't able to say no.
I don't think it's because of that. I think especially for women is the piece around needing to be a pleaser. They learn that in order to, like, when you do what other people want, you get love. So you learn that from a young age that, oh, if I do this, I get a lolly, or I get the good girl, good girl, come here, mommy's girl or daddy's
the
girl.
good girl. Can I just say that? Fuck her. She's not
Totally.
helpful. She's not helpful at all.
No, she's not at all.
And same for in the masculine, the good boy.
Yeah.
It's not fucking helpful.
And this is why some people, they just like, I had someone offer to house sit for us when we were away, and then they didn't come because we were expecting packages, and we lived we didn't have like a contained area for the packages. It was right on the street, and we knew the packages were delivered, and I'm like, dude, did you get the package? She's like, I'm busy, I'm sorry. And then later they said, I'm really sorry, I just didn't know how to say no. Like I overcommit, and I just don't have the time or the mental bandwidth to go do that. And I'm like, mate, why didn't you say that? Not that I would get somebody else to do it, which in the end that's what I did, but it would have saved me a lot of time and energy than chasing this person going, hey, the packages have been delivered, like, did you collect them? Because they didn't have the key. They had to reach out to me so I could give them the code to get the key. So that's why I was like, I know you didn't get them because you haven't asked me for the lock combination. And that was just one example of a time where as a male friend couldn't say no, because they're like the yes man of the world, where everybody's needs come first except theirs. Because they don't know how to say no.
Yeah, I've really kind of, I guess that's really come into my awareness over the past sort of year, is there is a huge difference between the good girl and the good woman. The good girl is about the pleaser, about, doing it for everybody else, but the good woman is about being good to herself first.
Absolutely, boundaries.
So, it's almost like the good girl is about being good to everyone else, but the good woman is about being good to, and if you're good to yourself first, like, that's just going to ripple out to everybody.
Because it goes back to, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So imagine a teapot, right? And if you're serving tea to everybody all the time, but you never made time to refill your teapot, well, there's not much to give, is there?
Yeah, I love that. And, we talk about self-care a lot, and I know people they talk about self-love, and I kind of feel like the conversation now needs to deepen, like, because we've talked about self-love and it's quite externalized where we're at right now. And but it's so true, because we're trying to come at self-love from a space of pouring into, it's almost like pouring into external aspects. Like self-love is getting a massage, getting your nails done, this outside business, this outside piece. But they're all beautiful things. I'm not taking away from that. But if that is all you're doing, that's not self-love. That's actually caring for your body externally. But it's not,
which is also important. Let's not
oh my God, I can't
that.
even tell you. No. But if that is the only thing that you're doing, there's got to be some other aspects brought into it.
Yeah.
And that, we need to, and like you said, we've got to be pouring into, and it's pouring into trusting yourself, trusting your choices, trusting your no's.
Yes.
Being able to speak.
And your yeses as well.
Oh God, just as important it is to know your no's, you know what your yeses are too. Because, some of those yeses might have been maybe I like that, too, into a hell yeah. I'm doing that.
That's right. Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about pleasure then, right? Because
my favorite topic.
I know, I love it. Got pleasure is on your t-shirt. I love that. And you know what? If we asked 100 people, got pleasure in your life, I believe that over 70-80% of them would ask, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like when I'm with a client in the first couple of sessions and we start talking about, what is it that you want? Not even what you need, right? We can't even dial into that. What is it that you want? And 90% of clients, or probably more, will be like either, I don't know, or well, I've got everything I want. Have you? Or have you got everything else everyone wants?
Yeah.
So let's talk about pleasure of self first.
Yeah. Well, so when I host live workshops, I always start with the question of, what is your definition of pleasure?
Okay.
And for most people is masturbation or sex or orgasm. And then sometimes if people are more on the spiritual side or more conscious side, then they'll say, like feeling the warmth of the sun in my skin, or going for a walk and smelling the roses. They actually, and I was like, yes, we're on the right track. And to me, that's what pleasure is anything that brings joy, that brings that like I love the sun. Like I'm such a sunbather slut. Like I love like just baking in the sun.
I am a sun whore. There is no denial. If there's sunshine, I'm shattered if I don't have a backyard where I can sunbake. Right?
That's right.
I absolutely, and it'll be my like lunch break, like I'll go out there 30 minutes each side, I'm basting.
Yes, absolutely. And so continuing on that train of thought is, when people think of pleasure and they think of orgasms and they think of masturbation or sex, if you dig deeper, why do they want that? And the answer is because it feels good. Why else would you do that? It feels good. And that's the only way a lot of these people know how to reach that feel good state. And so coming back to self-pleasure, not self-pleasures in masturbation, but you're creating your own pleasure. When I was saying earlier about touching the hands and learning to connect with your body, your touch, or and getting pleasure from other things like the sun in your skin or food. There's a practice called foodgasm, and it's one where you kind of like you're indulging in your food. It takes like 5 minutes for one bite, and it's really the smell of. So I have a little scrunchie here. So it's like so you bring it to your nose and you allow your brain to fully process that smell, because most people, they eat so fast, they never connect with their food, or to really bring that piece of to your lips and just kind of still inhale and feel the touch of the food on your lip, because the lips have a lot of nerve endings, right? So it can be very erotic. thing
Oh,
to
look, I'm
do
already
with
touching my lips
food.
over here. I'm like,
Yeah, it's one of our erogenous zones, primary erogenous zones.
Mm.
And then when you take a bite, one bite, and you just hold it in your mouth and you let it just sit there so it kind of melts and the mouth generates saliva, and you make a sound, like a you watch children and they're like and you do that, and the vibration of whatever it is in your mouth and the saliva and so many the what they call on the tongue, the receptors, right? Like there's a word for it I can't think of right now.
Yeah.
The taste buds, that's what I'm looking for. And it just creates this it is such an orgasmic experience. Why? Because you're really taking the time to slow down, because it takes the brain up to 3 seconds to fully process what's happening. But everything you do is so fast. It's so fast. We're just busy doing. And even when we are with another or touching self, it's like fast. And so the brain only captures a fraction of what is possible. So it's really taking the time, because anything can be an orgasmic experience if you are present enough, which is deepening your breath and taking the time to fully receive that sensation, like the sunbathing, right? To really be in the sun. And after a while, it may be too hot. And I'm like, oh, wow, too hot. I need to find the shade. Yeah. But if it's something that only happens for a few seconds, there's really not enough time. And this is why we train the mind to just go narrow focus on the present moment, on one thing at a time. Or like next time you see a flower, a rose, or a lily, take a full breath and really like take that fragrance in. And it's such a different experience than just going, oh yeah, that smells nice.
It's so true. And the word that came up for me when you were saying that is distraction. Even just down to eating, people will eat in front of the TV, or, like have their phone and be watching something. I see it all the time when people are out walking and running, or not so much running because I think you fall over, but walking. I quite often see people walking and looking at their phones.
Yeah.
And, like I often think, wow, but there's a whole world going on around you that you don't get to take in while you're doing that.
That's right.
Like I'm slowing down as I say it, because as I walk sometimes I have to slow myself down, and I do a practice, conscious walking. And and it's basically just even with my sneakers on, feeling every nuance of my foot hitting the ground. And sometimes it tires me, and that shows me how I'm really distracted, or I'm really like focused on a lot of other stuff. And the more that I do it, the more ease it becomes, more ease in my body, more ease in my mind. But it's this conscious steps, like feeling every part of my foot hitting the ground, and then I'll be able to move that awareness up my legs and into my body, and suddenly I'm feeling my whole body. The longer that takes me on a walk some days, the more I'm aware, you're not really present, babe.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think you're right. It's hard to, I really feel what you're saying. It's hard to get to a state of enjoying your life, and with so many distractions that we place in front of it.
Yeah. It's like the generation of fast food, right? Like is really like, but even with distractions, with phones, with Netflix, with go, the glamorization of I gotta be busy. And when you stop doing that and you just slow down, life is just so beautiful moment to moment. I have people telling me, I can't wait for the weekend, or I can't wait till I go on vacation. I can't wait until, and I'm like, what? I'm like right here, right now with you in this moment, really fully here, enjoying this. And then when this moment ends, the new moment begins. And I'm like, oh, this is great too, because I've dialed in, like very fine-tuned of the awareness and where I am. And not to say that I don't get distracted or that I don't get stressed, but I'm able to pull myself out of that state so much quicker, because it feels really good to experience pleasure all, like 99% of the time, even, and not pleasure in a sexual way, but really to feel like right now I'm touching my hands. I'm like, oh, my hands are really warm and cozy, and I feel some tingling. So without even thinking, I'm already feeling and connecting with this part of my body. You know, that I'm talking about my body, it's like different parts. It's like, oh, hello, hello, oh, hi. So it's not having to think hard about it, but just to tune in, which means I'm in the present moment. And, you know, they say there's no better time than right now. And right now is really awesome. And most people can't be in the now. They're either too worried about the past or too concerned about the future. And they just don't know how to be here and now.
Oh, look, I agree with you. The best moment that we can be in is the one that we're in right now.
Because that's all you got.
Well, can't change the past. And I don't know about you, but like I can manifest the shit out of my life, and the things that come into it are amazing, but I can never plan it all. I can never work out the how of it. Like I'm always amazed at how things arrive into my life and what they look like and how it's packaged. But look, I absolutely agree with you. And I think a lot of people are, you know, plan the next holiday because it, you know, and I often say to people, if you need to, if you're looking for the holiday to, you know, that's what your shining light is, you need to start having a look at your life, because your shining light needs to be in there. And the holiday needs to be a little delicious extra, you know, like, but you know, this right now, Bea, this is delicious.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, wow. I'm here every day.
Well,
I get to enjoy this all day, every day.
And you know, I don't know about you, but I often get comments about, God, you've got such a great attitude and I love your energy, and it's like, because I practice it every moment of the day. It's a choice I make. I'm aware of myself, which then allows you to be aware of other. And so I want to ask about that, because once you're in the present moment and once, you know, you've really at home in yourself, what happens to being able to, you know, like fill someone else's cup? What happens to the other? How can your attention go there?
What do you mean? How can your attention go there?
If you're in full awareness of self, or as much as you can be of self, because I don't, you know, I don't know that I can be fully aware of myself at all times. I'm a mother of 3, so I'm quite distracted sometimes.
I get it. Yep. No, I have many friends who are parents.
When you're bringing, but then are you able then to bring someone else into your pleasure, into your enjoyment?
Yeah.
So
because if you think about it, life is much better when it's shared with others. Doesn't have to necessarily be your intimate partner, but even with friends and family and people you love. I mean, it's nice to be someone who can fill up their own cup, but if there's no one to share it with, I mean, sometimes it's boring and lonely, and it's so much nicer to share and to, you know, have conversations and giggles and share experiences. And it's a dance. Some people are very codependent in their relationship, and some people are too independent, right? So you have your anxious attachment and your avoidant, and you kind of so very few people find that security on, oh wow, let's connect now. And then when that comes to a close, then they're happy to go their separate ways, and still feel whole. But most people, they rely on their partner to feel a sense of wholeness, and others rely on, they're too independent and they are really unable to connect, to find the depth of the intimacy, because they're really afraid to lose their independence, right? So you have the two extremes. And so when you are able to self-source, then you get to choose. It's always a choice. Oh, wow, it'd be really nice to share this moment right now with a friend or with my partner or with whoever. And sometimes I'm like, my cup is full, and okay, well, I'm gonna go over there. So we happen to have two, not one, but we have 2 camper vans, right? So so one is mine and one is my partner's, and we share a house. And So my partner's got his office and I have my own office, but I don't like hanging out in my office by myself. I like going in my van. And so I'm just like, I'm going to be in the van now. And I go there and I read and I nap and I write and I self-pleasure and meditate and I do all the things that I want to do. But I know in the past, I was always unable to ask for what I needed or to take space because I was afraid because I also had that mentality of, oh, but I have to give. And what if I say no? What would they think? And what will happen? And but because I had these beliefs about how relationships should be.
Yeah.
And now I don't have those at all. And so we have, so there are two individuals that come together and then they mix their cups. It's juicy and yummy. And then, okay, well, no, I'm going to go over there and they're going to go over there. And we have our separate experiences. And then we come together and we usually have meals together. And we both work from home, but we have our offices and do our own thing. And then at the end of the day, more often than not, my partner, he's like, I'm really tired now. I need time to recharge before we connect. Go do you. So he goes there, he does his thing, I do my thing, and then we come together for dinner and sometimes a cuddle, and sometimes he takes the night off and does his thing, and no worries. So it's beautiful to be able to choose. And then we have date nights as well.
I love the communication that you're really speaking into there, because it does take a high level of communication to be able to have that of, oh, well, actually, I'm going to tap out for the night.
Yep.
Because
absolutely.
I can't, I don't, this is not for me right now. I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And often people, like you spoke of before about being rejected.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you really are, for me, speaking volumes about the high level of communication that successful, connected, high trust, vulnerable, intimate relationships need.
And just for the record, it hasn't always been this way. So the way it is now is because before it wasn't. So there was a contrast, right? So now I know that I'm on the right track because I know exactly what I don't want, because I've had all the blah experiences and the feeling rejected and feeling needy and clingy and not knowing what I wanted, and then turning that around to knowing exactly what I want, how I want it, not being afraid to ask for it. And that's where the piece of the intimacy, the trust and pleasure comes in, because I am my own whole person, and this person is like an add-on. It's kind of like you have a cake with icing, and then they ask you, do you want some sprinkles or do you want some dry fruits on your cake?
Yeah.
Versus you wanting this person to be the layer of your cake, as well as the icing, as well as the fruit and the sprinkles and all that. Like, you can't have a cake if you're relying on other people to, on another person to bring all the ingredients. You can't.
Yeah, I love that analogy, because it's so, continually coming home to yourself is about understanding where you source all the different ingredients from.
Absolutely.
And they're not going to come from one place, because if you're looking at what goes into a cake, that doesn't all come from the one plant. It doesn't all come from one place.
Not.
It comes from a whole bunch of different places. So, they have the fullness of your cup, and truly come home, you don't know where all those little parts come from. Oh, I love that. I love it. I love it all.
So
and
good.
You know what I love the most? We've really not spoken about sex a lot, which is amazing, because I really do believe people have this idea about what a pleasure mentor, what a sexologist and embodiment coach would be about. And, and for sure, it is about that, because God damn it, I want everyone having great sex, quite frankly.
Absolutely.
With themselves and other, 100%, because it's lovely, it's beautiful. So what happens? Someone's coming into your pleasure masterclass. I want to talk about the work that you do. What is it? What's the purpose? And, so what are some of the things they're learning?
So the Pleasure Masterclass is a 6-week online course, and is really the foundation of what we talk about today. So I mentioned, I've given you like 4 lessons in one, which is really getting you to breathe, and to tune in to your senses.
Okay.
And then the touch, and then just connecting the hands, and then touching and feeling for the sensations as you explore the hand, and then the arms and the face. So it's the different parts each day. So you get a lesson every day. You have 4 lessons a week.
Okay.
And
Wow.
day 1 to 4, you get a brand new lesson. And then 5, you repeat your most challenging or uninteresting lesson of the week. And day 6, you do your most pleasurable or most exciting. And day 7, I leave it up to you. And then week 2, we start with a new round. So it's 6 weeks of that. So the purpose of the Pleasure Masterclass is a bite-size course. There's a short video and a 20-minute guided recording. So you don't have to do anything other than press play and create space for 20 minutes to follow the guidance.
Yeah, beautiful.
So I remind you to take a breath and to make sounds and to touch and to observe what sensations are present and what kind of, if you want more pressure, less pressure, faster or slower. So you learn to build a connection with your body. And it's because it is a 6-week period and you do it every day, over time, like driving, right? Repetition, like learning how to tie your shoe, repetition. And then you start noticing what your distractions are, the thoughts you think about all the time. And if people really started paying attention to their thoughts, if they meditate, they know what their thoughts are. But if they don't, they will notice that it's like this broken record, or like back in the day with the CDs, right? Like only 10 to 12 tracks, and they just go again and again and again and again from different angles, right? So it's not the exact same thought, but from different angles. And when you start doing the work with your body, so in the Pleasure Masterclass, is you start noticing your distractions and how you start fantasizing, or how you think about your to-do list, the phone call you need to make, or the thing you didn't say. And then you learn tools to get rid of those distractions so you can really come home to the feeling, to the sensations. And what I learned in my experience, and that's why the course is 6 weeks, and to tell you the truth, I created this course for me so I could guide me.
In the half of my work has come from.
So I recorded because I didn't want to think about the practices. I just wanted to press play, but no one did what I wanted. So I'm like, well, if it doesn't exist, I'm going to have to create it. So that's what I did.
Yes.
And the purpose is for people so 6 weeks is enough time to have to strengthen that awareness muscle. But like anything, it's practice, and you have to keep going. Like if you want to grow muscle, you go to the gym and you change your diet and your lifestyle, and you keep going to the gym. Maybe not with the same frequency as when you started, but there's like a maintenance, right? And the same is true with this practice that I teach and I embody and I love, is that I give you all the tools, everything you need, 6 weeks, bite size, and then it's just maintenance. And over time, what happened with me is that I live and breathe this stuff, that I don't have to stop and make time for it, because it has become, even when I'm moving, I'm still getting pleasure. So I've been talking to you, I've been playing with my scrunchie here and getting pleasure out of my scrunchie.
I've got to tell you, and it's not even from that perspective, because I'm so like engaged in this is such an important conversation. I sit on a Fitball and it's vibrating, but it's because my vibrations shifted, and I'm just like, I love this energetic stuff. Like, I love it.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, this is what people need to know, this stuff.
Absolutely.
And so then from the 6 weeks, so when people are working one-on-one with you, tell me about that coaching. I'd love to hear about that.
So the one-on-one coaching is a 12-week program.
Okay.
So in the past, when I started, I was kind of testing things out, and I'm like, and over time I learned that what works is a minimum of 3 months.
Yeah. Yes.
Depending on their level of embodiment. But if they've never done any work before, if you don't even know what embodiment is, minimum 3 months, but more likely 6 months.
Yes.
Commitment, which is 1 session a week with email and WhatsApp support in between. So it's not like you're, like we meet once a week and that's it, I want to hear from you kind of thing. So you have that support. Sometimes stuff comes up, emotions come up, or challenges come up, or even victories, like celebration, right? Like you want to share that with someone. So I give my clients the option to check in as well too. And so what happens is in the beginning, I ask them a bunch of questions. What is that you want? I'm like, what is your holiday land looks like? Like I usually use Hawaii as a destination. And I'm like, great, you want to go to Hawaii? Okay, I'm like your travel agent to Hawaii, your travel guide. Like you just tell me I want to go to Maui and don't worry about it. I'll take you there. But there's a bit of right, but like to get to Hawaii, there's a bit of planning, right? Like it's not doesn't happen overnight. You gotta buy your ticket, you have to pack your bags, you have to decide where you want to go, where you want to stay, and so you don't have to do any of that. You just decide you're going, and I take you to Hawaii.
Oh, I love it. Woo! 12 weeks time. I mean, that's
minimum. That's a minimum.
But yeah, I have a final 3 questions for you. They're the final 3 whats that I ask everybody. So I want to know, what is well-being to you?
Wow. As you asked the question, I took a deep breath, and there's really this piece of feeling my body and being in alignment with my truth. And is this what I want right now? Is this going to support me? And I know you work with soul, and it's really that, right? Does this feed my soul?
Yes.
Right? Does this feel like a hell yes? This like, for example, I have a love and hate relationship with bubbles, alcohol, right? And then I go into this, I want to drink, no, I don't want to drink. So it's kind of like that. Is this glass of bubbles going to support my well-being right now? Is this going to make me feel good? So is that constant check-in of, is this going to feed this, not just this physical body, but this energetic spirit, soul, whatever other names there are out there, essence, authentic self.
Goosebumps. I love that. So then what are your must-do daily well-being practices?
Gratitude before, when I wake up, I am grateful for my day ahead. And when I go to bed, I do gratitude for the day as well as a forgiveness exercise. And so I put a hand on my chest and a hand on my belly, and I just breathe and I feel and I thank my body for the day and for taking me places and for the journey. So when I do the gratitude, I do, it's like if I eat really delicious food, and sometimes I eat not so great foods like chips and a burger or a glass of bubbles. And then I ask my body for forgiveness for, I say, I'm sorry. Do you know Ho'oponopono?
Yeah.
The Hawaiian forgiveness practice. So I do that, and I ask my body for forgiveness for feeding foods that are not ideal, that doesn't support my well-being.
I love it. So then what impact do these practices and well-being have on your life?
Oh, like I said before, no words can describe, because if someone told me about the stuff like they did in the past about these amazing orgasms, I'm like, you're just making this up. Like, it can't be that easy or that good or that right. And now that I am on the other side, it's giving me everything. Everything is giving me love, freedom, acceptance, compassion, abundance. I'm feeling goosebumps right now as I say this, because it's taking me out of my head and worrying and stressing and beating myself up, not good enough, not pretty enough, not sexy enough, too old to find a partner, blah, blah, blah. All the chatter doesn't exist anymore.
I love it.
And when it comes in, I have tools that gets me out of that in minutes, no more than half hour. My partner and I have not had a fight for 3 months, 0 arguments, 0 discussion, 0, because I'm very aware. Not that he didn't say things that would trigger me, but because I didn't let that get to me. And then one day I lost it because he just kept poking, right? And then after we broke our 3-month spell a few weeks ago, and within 36 hours, it was all sorted back to, because I left the house. I'm like, see you later, buddy. I'm not going to put up with this. So I needed space. That's when I went, okay, I need to do me. I need to self-care. And within 36 hours from the moment of the trigger to the moment I got home and we talk and come back to full love, to as if we didn't have a fight, 36 hours.
Beautiful.
That takes a high level of skill.
Yeah,
And I am so grateful for my practices. And I also attend circles as well as a participant, because it like, you never stop learning. The only time you stop learning is when you die.
100%.
And then one can go into a whole thing about
that's a different kind of learning,
but that's a whole different podcast, right?
yeah, exactly. That's a completely different podcast. I love it. Oh, Bea, this has been amazing. And
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your time and energy, and just so generous in your wealth of knowledge. And I love how passionate you are about what you do, and we so need you in the world. So I'm grateful that you are, and you're following your passion and what you love, and so much wealth of knowledge as well. How do people connect with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, so the best way to connect with me, believe it or not, is email.
Beautiful. Well, can we do that through your website if we go?
You can. So my email is bea@beabliss.com. So super short, super simple, bea@beabliss.com. My website, pleasuremasterclass.com, is my new website. I'd love to.
I love the website as well.
And that's pretty much it. I get really overwhelmed with social media. I'm always dabbling in and out, and I'm like, and so I keep it simple. Email, WhatsApp, actually, texting, WhatsApp, but mostly email and contact form on the website.
Beautiful. Well, thank you everyone for sharing your time. Thanks, Bea, for being
pleasure.
Absolutely amazing.
And can I throw in there that I do offer a 30-minute complimentary consultation for people to look at their blind spots and their blockages, and it's just like a really like create a bit of a map of where you are, what's stopping you, where you want to go. All that is available on the website as well. So
beautiful. Well, I'll put your details for website up next. That'll be, so stay with us, and you can actually see that next and know how to connect with Bea and take your journey into creating amazing pleasure in your life. What a deliciously rich conversation. This has been amazing, and definitely went to places that I never imagined, so I love that. And I really do appreciate it. So I absolutely want your likes, comments, please share. Thank you.
Super happy to answer any questions. Just drop them down below, or
shoot questions.
Super happy to answer them.
I love it. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time on Connected Conversation.
See you next time. Thank you so much.
Head to pleasuremasterclass.com. To connect with me, head to emmamuir.com. Enjoy your day, and thanks for sharing your time.